When the St. Vincent de Paul people first contacted me and said, look, we've got these two families, that have come to us. They're kind of in our area. And this is something up and above what we typically have funding for, would be able to kind of handle, would St. Paul's be able to help in any fashion? So I talked to Father Pat about this, and I said, there's an opportunity that we have to potentially help them, and we can make it part of our Easter funding.
Well, I remember Jim saying, I want to do this. What do you think? And I was like, oh my God. Um, what's going to happen here? Where are we going? How's it going to work out? And I was totally blown away by the response. It was, we really, we all worked together, and I think we did an amazing job. Everybody working together on that.
Father Pat said, this is, and you can talk more of this, Father Pat, but you said, these are the crucified of today. This is what we are called to do as Passionists.
And the first thing I thought was, we've been so blessed ourselves. Why don't we just dedicate the whole collection to this need? And of course, it's so much in keeping with our understanding of the contemporary Passion, that these are Christ suffering in our very midst. I also knew that it was a dicey kind of enterprise because, like so many things, it's become a politicized issue. And I knew we would have to be careful in appealing to our retreatants outside of political context and trying to just relate it to what we preach every weekend on retreats, that Christ, this is the contemporary Passion. We are standing in unity with those at the foot of the cross who are in need.
It's not always easy to kind of do some things, but if a lot of people give even a small amount of money, great things can happen. And so we knew it was a risk.
We've been getting donations from people that have never given before, like the surprise gift from one couple who were under the radar, and yet they were so happy that they could give and support this.
And how some people hadn't given in years and gave to this because they knew the money was going to go where it needed to go. And it was just a beautiful thing talking to these donors. They had so much faith in us that we would make that happen.
What was affirming in this for me as a preacher here of the Passion, we've been reaching people with the right message. I think if we hadn't been doing this pre-evangelization all these years, people might have responded differently. We have reached hearts when we talk about the suffering of Christ and Christ's suffering in our brothers and sisters. And I think that's why people responded as well as they did.
But also to kind of remind people about the crucified of today, and part of our responsibility to work with those folks.
And then coming up with this kind of commitment amidst all three provinces to really get involved. And to coming back from that, thinking, how do we get involved in Detroit? How do we tell the other side of the story? How do we tell the human side of the story? And I knew there was a lot of organizations working with it. So it was like, how can we pull them together? We can't.
And I think when we first talked about trying to gather these organizations, I was a little hesitant with the thought of, is anyone going to want to come to this? We know that they're busy. We know that there's a lot on their plate, and there's just this large influx of migrants in the city. And so, are we going to be able to even get people here? And the fact that we blindly sent so many invitations, Faith knew of a few people that she's worked with before, but for the most part, it was a matter of, okay, what organizations are in Detroit? And let's just find someone's contact information and send them an invitation. And it worked out very well.
And certainly one of the things we can do is what we do well. We can provide retreats for the workers who are always exhausted and overworked. We can provide retreats for the migrants, some space to come and process what they've lived through to get here and what lies ahead of them still on the journey. So I started talking with Emily, and we thought, why don't we try to gather these folks and just hear their stories? What do they need? What would be helpful? And see where that goes. Those organizations are looking for ways to network and support one another as well. How are we going to relay this in our newsletter? How can we talk a little bit more about this and to come up, we're going to support these two families, and we may have extra money, and what are we going to do with that money? And we said we're going to split it up amongst this coalition. We're going to gift the coalition as well. We told that to our donors right from the get-go.
When we were kind of blindly, often, as Emily said, reaching out to folks, inevitably people would know somebody else and they would recommend, like, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. Or some of our board members said, you should talk to so-and-so, and started putting these people together. How do we kind of integrate what's going on at Freedom House with what's going on with Strangers No Longer, or some of the food banks that are out there that have been serving the migrant community, or the legal services that they all need as we brought people together. As I think as we bring people together going forward, that integration will help the whole migration community, to act in concert with each other.
But the fact that you're bringing them together, they have a place to go, they're going to be able to chat with each other. That's huge.
And doing that is part of our charism. It's exactly what our charism calls us to do from a faith perspective.
And Emily and I had kind of used some of the tenets of Catholic social teaching to draw forth the conversation. But one of the things that we heard at the end was how grateful they were to be able to come together and talk and share the truth of their journey, the struggles of their journey, but end up in a hopeful place. That's our charism. That's why we're able to do that. And it's just it's kind of heartwarming.
And along with this coalition, we also are going to begin another form of ongoing support for these organizations, where we have this new initiative called Walking with the Crucified. And we are just going to ask our retreatants and our friends to bring in items that these different organizations have requested. And again, it's just another way for us to get people involved in, walking along these migrants on their new journey. And as Pope Francis said in his most recent address, the seas and the deserts do not have to be cemeteries, but spaces where God may open roads to freedom and fraternity. And with this coalition and our new initiative, we are hoping to help in opening some of those roads.